watching SABC News. This is the Week in Review here on SABC News. It's good to be in your company. This is our regular gathering point for us to pause and reflect on the key and consequential news developments of the week. And we do that because we have a country to run, a continent to build, and a world to navigate. So let's get started. Pope Francis, who died on Monday at the age of 88, has been laid to rest in Rome today. His funeral has drawn dignitaries from across the world, as well as tens of thousands of faithful. The South African Revenue Service has urged VAT vendors, including retailers, to continue charging VAT at the rate of 15%. In a statement, SARS says it recognizes the significant impact that the decision to reverse the 0.5 percentage points increase will have on VAT vendors and consumers. The revenue collector has acknowledged that vendors and consumers have invested in preparing for an increase in VAT during a period of uncertainty. Eskom says despite setbacks, it is determined to prevent rolling blackouts as winter sets in. The power utility briefed Parliament's Electricity and Energy Committee on its strategic plan for the period between 2025 and 2030. This after the power utility abruptly implemented stage 2 blackouts on Thursday afternoon and later suspended it. Hey, good afternoon. It's great to be in your company on this rather significant and historic day. Let me bring you an update of some news coming in within our borders now. The funeral of 24-year-old student Sisonke Mbolekwa, who was shot dead on Tuesday last week, is underway at Matatiele in the Eastern Cape. Mbolekwa, who was a student at the Walter Sisulu University, was shot on campus, allegedly by residence manager Manelisi Mampane. Mampane is now facing charges of murder, attempted murder, unlawful possession of a firearm and ammunition following the fatal shooting and wounding of 2 other students. The suspect made a brief court appearance at the Mthatha Magistrates Court for a bail application, where the students were protesting outside the court for the suspect to be denied bail. He will remain behind bars until the next court appearance, which will be next week on Friday. So for more on that story then, let's go live now to our reporter, Nkululeko Nyembezi. Good morning to you, Nkululeko. It can't be an easy day. It must be a difficult day for the family. Tell me about how proceedings have gone and what has been said about the student who died during that incident.
Yes, good afternoon, Tulas. Indeed, it was a very sober moment, especially for the family, because when the body of this student arrived here, we saw the tears from the family members, fellow students, and even the villagers here rolling down their faces, because now they're beginning to realize that really this has happened. And then this is the last day of this young man who was doing that year at the University of Walter Sisulu. And then he was described as a man who was protective, as much especially against gender-based violence. He was really focused, humble. At the same time, he wanted to change in this small village of Masakala. But now we know that this has been going on for some time now. I'm joined by the Walter Sisulu University Registrar, Dr. Lulamile Ula just before me, to tell us more about this, because we understand that really the past few days has been eventful. We know that it started from the unrest to the shooting incident, and we know that now we're now at the funeral. For sure, it is not an easy pill to swallow. Can you just maybe take us through on that?
Yes, Nyembezi, it has been a hard time to our university, and indeed a shock about the incident. And hence the University Council took solid decisions that the university must take full responsibility and make sure the student is buried with dignity. We've done that today to make sure that Sisonke is rest in peace, in dignity, and to make sure that as well we mourn with the family and we transition with the family and get into a new chapter of healing.
So what is the university's stance on the bail application of the suspect? We understand that on the 2nd of May he will be reappearing before the court of law and then is supposed to make a bail application.
The university firstly suspended the accused staff member to have committed this shootout. And indeed, when we learned that he was arrested by police, we have taken a full support to the law and its process to take its course to make sure that justice ultimately is served on the matter of Sisonke.
So would you say maybe the situation now is better now the university is calmer as compared to the previous days?
It is so ambivalent, it's so somber, and I think as we have come here today, we will transition to accept that we have to move on. And the Council of the University have asked the university management to roll out counseling services to our students who have been affected psychologically about the situation, to make sure they have strong coping mechanisms to go back to their teaching and learning activities. It's not a moment that the university is proud of. It's a moment where we have said from the side of the university, it shall never happen again.
Tell us more about the investigation that has been conducted by the council. Are we likely maybe to see answers to the questions?
We are confident that the retired Judge Jafta, will assist the university as he is heading the commission to arrive to a true truth that exactly what happened, because we want to know exactly what happened so that the university can take decisive actions and take actions that are able to give equal answer to what has happened. So we have a trust that Judge Jafta will assist with the commission.
Doc, for sure, this must have been a wake-up call. Do you have a fire policy? And then are you sure that these students, even in fact, the population within this institution are really safe?
We had no reasons not to believe our students are not safe. For a very long time, our safety and security has been strong as a university in that campus of Mthetha. We have noticed with great regret the lapse of security and the violence that has taken place. And we have taken a stance to even say the company that was contracted to do or conduct or to render security services on behalf of the university, when it had failed and turned its guns to our students, we have terminated its contract. We do have rules in place that regulate and prohibit the arms and all forms of weapon coming into university. And going forward, ours is to make sure those who are in the security cluster of the university enforces all means and all university rules to make sure that we don't have guns on the premises of the university, whether legally or illegally. The council has declared our campuses as gun-free zone campus.
Thank you very much, Doc. That was Dr. Lulamile from the University of Walter Sisulu. He's a registrar there. But now I'm joined by a family spokesperson here, Mr. Nceba Oncedo. Beg your pardon. Say, Mr. Kolanisi, how is the family been holding up on this matter?
Well, it has been an emotional roller coaster. since day one of the passing of the young man by the name of Sisonke Mboleko. You must remember, Nkululeko, that this is not just a person that was going to better his future, but he was going to better the future of his mother, his family, and the entire community. If you remember correctly, even in his memorial service, it was reported with evidence that he was indeed a protector of women. And you know, the community that he comes from is embattled by many cases of gender-based violence. So this was an epitome of hope, an epitome of a person that will create a new generation of men that are conscious towards gender-based violence.
So are you happy about the way in which the university has been handling the matter or the ordeal?
We can never be happy until the university issues a public apology, first and foremost, for denying the existence of this young man in the university as a student. We hear them saying that they are taking responsibility, but however, in the same manner that they went on TV and rejected knowing him, they should do it in the same manner and actually say, no, we were wrong, we are sorry for the criminal injury caused, we take full responsibility for that, and it shall never happen again. Because you must remember, everybody, there are many people out there that were watching, and there are still many people that think that Sisonke was actually a criminal that trespassed in Walter Sisulu University.
So how has the family welcomed the arrest and the court appearance of the suspect?
Well, it brought comfort to the mother, to be specific, that actually the wheels of justice are taking place. And also we have to commend the senior officer, which I cannot mention by name, that was appointed to take care of this case, you understand. Also, we cannot run away from the fact that it was the intervention of General Mutishani, who is the commissioner of Owartambo region. It was his intervention that caused that this docket should be treated with the greatest interest as it deserves.
So what would the family like to see going forward on this matter?
Well, my brother, we cannot run away from the fact that the funeral doesn't cover the future possible loss of earnings of the family. Here they've taken away a young man that has not even entered into the labor market but had prospects of entering into the labor market. This was a third-year student, so the university must not just bury the child, but however there should be compensations in plan for the family to take place, or else we will compel them through court to do that.
Thank you very much. That was Mr. Kolanisi speaking on behalf of the family here. The funeral is now almost over. Back to you at studio.
All right, thank you for that. That's Nkululeko Nyembezi live for us there in Matatiele, attending that funeral, taking you to the heart of the story. Stay with us here on the Weekend Review, because in a moment, we'll tell you about the process that President Cyril Ramaphosa has initiated to try and appoint our next Deputy Chief Justice, a position that has been vacant since the 1st of September last year. Stay with us. Hey, welcome back. Some news to do with the judiciary now. And President Cyril Ramaphosa has initiated consultations with the Judicial Service Commission and leaders of political parties represented in the National Assembly on the appointment of a new Deputy Chief Justice. You'll know that that position has been vacant since September last year, September the 1st to be specific, when the current Chief Justice, Mandisa Maya, took over as Chief Justice. The President has shortlisted 4 candidates for this esteemed role: Judge Dunstan Mlambo, Judge Mahube Mulemela, Judge Kegni John Musi, and Judge Lazarus Pule Tlaletsi. Each of the candidates, we are told, brings a wealth of experience and expertise to the table. But what sets them apart and what qualities are essential for this critical position? I'm joined now by Zikhona Ndlebe, a senior legal researcher at Judges Matter. Zikhona, good afternoon. Thank you for your time this afternoon. The time that it has taken, I think I'd like us to start there. The time that it has taken for President Cyril Ramaphosa to come to this point of initiating this process of appointing a Deputy Chief Justice. What does that tell us? What does it say, given what we know about the importance of the role?
We've been concerned about the fact that we have not had a permanent Deputy Chief Justice since the 1st of September. And we put up a clock on our website as Judges Matter, and just to count the number of days that we have not had a permanent Deputy Chief Justice. However, we think that the President has made a good decision when it comes to nominating 4 candidates for the position of Deputy Chief Justice. We think that the position is very important, as is the position of Chief Justice was important in 2021 when the President decided to do away with the normal process of just appointing or recommending one person. He recommended 4 judges in 2021. So we're seeing a similar process taking place now. And we think that the President, he has made a good decision at the end of the day, although it has taken a while to get to that decision.
Yeah. Tell me about that shift from the President nominating just one name and allowing for that consultation with the JSC as well as leaders of political parties represented in Parliament. Why is it important that for the second time he seems to be taking a different track that says, I will not only present you with one name, but a selection of names? What does it afford the President when he does that?
So let's first look at Section 174, subsection 2 of the Constitution, because it states that the President is the head of the executive, national executive. After consulting the JSC and the leaders of political parties, he appoints the Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justice, the President of the Supreme Court of Appeal, and the Deputy President of the SCA. So that means that the President has the discretion to who he can appoint as Chief Justice, a DCJ, a President of the SCA, or a Deputy President of the SCA. So at this point, the President has decided to exercise his discretion by selecting 4 people to be interviewed. So that means that the JSC will interview 4 candidates instead of 1 candidate, and it will make recommendations to the President as to the fitness of each of those candidates to hold the position of DCJ. And then the President has the final say as to who he will appoint as the Deputy Chief Justice. It's a similar process that we saw in 2021 when the Chief Justice was appointed, and in 2021, the former Chief Justice Dondo was appointed. So it's quite similar. We think that it's good that he's opened up the process because the position of DCJ is an important position. It provides support to the Chief Justice. And a DCJ has a very important role also to play in general, because if you look at the role of a Deputy Chief Justice, although it's not the same as that of a Chief Justice, it's quite similar. So if you look at Section 4, subsection 2 of the Superior Courts Act, it says that the DCJ must exercise the powers and perform the functions of the Chief Justice if there is an absence of vacancy in the CJ role, or if the CJ specifically assigns those powers and functions to the DCJ. And that basically means that if the Chief Justice is not there, then the Deputy Chief Justice needs to be the head of the judiciary or lead the judiciary. The DCJ also chairs the JCC, which is the Judicial Conduct Committee, which is responsible for disciplining judges. That's an important role that the DCJ plays as well. And the DCJ is also the chairperson of the Council of the South African Judicial Education Institute by delegation. So the DCJ has a very important role. Therefore, we need a DCJ who is able to perform these functions. So opening up the process means that we will be spoiled for choice. The President will be spoiled for choice.
So the President is spoiled for choice. Let's talk about the choices that he has whittled it down to. The 4 candidates that I mentioned in my introduction: Dunstan Mlambo, Judge President of Gauteng; Judge Mahube Mulemela; Judge Kegni John Musi, as well as Judge Lazarus Pule Tlaletsi. Without asking you to make up the mind for the President and make a recommendation now, what do you think of the caliber as well as the strengths that they would bring to this particular process?
It's beautiful to see that the President has looked into this and he has decided to nominate people or judges who have leadership experience. and they've been in the judiciary for quite a long period of time. Madam Justice Molemela, she is now the president of the Supreme Court of Appeal, and she's taken over from now Chief Justice Maya. That role as the president of the SPA is very important because it is the court which is the second highest after the Constitutional Court. We've got Judge Musi. He is the judge president of the Free State High Court. He has worked his way from the ranks, through the ranks, from the magistracy to his current position. He has wealth of experience. His wealth of experience, including experience of the lower courts. So that counts in his favor. And Judge President Galezi, he is the judge president of the Northern Cape. He's been a judge president since 2017, but he's been the DCJ of that court from 2013. He also has wealth of knowledge. And one of the cases that he has penned down, Judge President Galezi, which I think it requires, being a judge and being a judge president requires a person who's innovative, with an open mind. And he's penned down a case in the Kiev Country Estate versus where an employee was dismissed for absconding work because she had gone to consult a traditional healer. And he said in his judgment that employees who should not be trivialized for beliefs which they may not subscribe to. So he's innovative. But if you look at Judge President Mlambo, he heads the busiest court, the Gauteng court. He's the judge president of the Gauteng court. It's the busiest court, and he's sat on high-profile cases which are sometimes political, but that's the job of the judge president. He has introduced case lines. Gauteng is the first division that has had case lines, and now there's a rollout of case lines throughout the Superior Court. And Gauteng started that process. And it has been confirmed that that process works. And just a few weeks ago, the judge president of the Gauteng High Court made it mandatory for there to be mediation in civil cases. Yeah. That's a direction. That's a way to the right direction. That's the kind of judges and DCJ that we need, innovative, who are able to find ways to make justice accessible, because people cannot wait until 2031 to have their cases heard. And Judge President Mlambo made sure that there are measures put in place to ensure that that doesn't happen. And the reality is that in many litigation cases, civil matters, people settle on the doorsteps of the court. Sure. And if you take that in mind, and mediation can actually resolve the backlog. So Judge President Mlambo, I would say, perhaps is the front runner for the DCJ position.
So for someone who's watching, an ordinary person watching our conversation this afternoon, Zikhona, why does this choice matter? In the context of, all I want as an ordinary South African is that if I have a dispute that can be resolved through the application of law, I should be able to approach a court and be able to be assisted and get justice where my rights are affected. How does the choice of a DCJ help further that objective?
All right. So let's first look at the position of a Chief Justice. The Chief Justice is the head of the entire judiciary, which includes lower courts, the magistrate courts, the small claims courts. And a DCJ provides support to the head of the judiciary. And there are various things that are delegated to the DCJ, as I've mentioned before. And if we've got a DCJ who has strengths that are needed to support the Chief Justice, who is innovative, a DCJ who is able to think outside the box and find ways to ensure that there is access to justice, then we can rest assured that the poorest of the poor who go to the magistrate court will also be thought about when decisions are being made in relation to the judiciary. So that is very important. That is why we need a Deputy Chief Justice who is going to basically be the perfect right-hand man or woman to the Chief Justice. And if we look at Judge President Mlambo and the division that he's the Judge President of, and the amount of work that he has done in that division, which is enormous, he perhaps is the suitable candidate for the position of district chair.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights this afternoon. That is Zikhona Ndlebe, who is a senior legal researcher at Judges Matter. Stand by. The VAT increase that was on and then it was off, and at some point it was reduced, has been all the political talk for quite some time now. We'll give you history and backdrop because this is not the first time that VAT has been contentious. Extensive reporting by our economics editor coming up in a moment. Welcome back. Following the decision to abandon plans to increase value-added tax from the 1st of May, we look at the history of this often controversial tax since its first introduction in 1991. The National Party then proposed VAT tax as the most efficient instrument to raise government revenue following the impact of international sanctions that almost crippled the state. The ANC and its alliance partners were the biggest opponents of the tax when it was first introduced. SABC economics editor Tsepo Mongwai has compiled this insert looking at some of the developments around the first introduction of VAT.
The African National Congress was among several organizations that united against the introduction of value-added tax in the early 90s. The liberation movement believed that the tax would deepen poverty in black communities and fuel inflation. More concerning at that time was the proposed application of the tax on medical and municipal services. Some viewed this as an introduction of a tax on another tax. Most municipal councils were against the VAT.
Well, the Johannesburg City Council, as with other major cities, as with other members of the United Municipal Executive, are going to make very strident representations to the Minister of Finance that this should not be allowed and that we should be zero rated as far as property is concerned.
Despite the nationwide objection to VAT, government went ahead and it was introduced. This prompted a nationwide strike action on the 4th of November 1991. COSATU, along with the African National Congress and other organizations, led the strike action.
We estimate that more than 3.5 million workers today supported the general strike, which was called to demand that the government change the VAT system and immediately enter into negotiations on the macroeconomic future and policies of South Africa. Today's action was also a remarkable display of unity by a wide range of trade unions, civic, political organizations, business groups across the spectrum. NAFCOC, FAPCOS, SAPTA, and small business fully supported this action. We commend these organizations for the efficient way in which they have ensured that our action was a success.
Few months before the introduction of VAT, government consulted various stakeholders for inputs. A multiracial coordinating committee on VAT was established to formalize engagement with the government of F.W. de Klerk on the proposed introduction of VAT. The group was represented by 18 organizations, including Operation Hunger, trade unions, consumer and health bodies.
The state president has given us his undertaking that he would look very seriously at the proposals we put before him today, particularly those proposals relating to zero rating of basic foodstuffs, the provisions for mechanisms to enable particularly the disadvantaged communities on questions of water and electricity. There was also a commitment from him to look at further ways on negotiation related to provision of poverty relief programs. We do believe, however, and made it very clear in our meetings, that we felt that those provisions for poverty relief were totally inadequate.
The education sector took the decision not to take part in the nationwide protest actions, but teacher unions warned that pupils and teachers were prepared to join the picket lines soon after the examinations.
We don't want to plan any form of mass action because we think that all our efforts must be directed at the examination process. After examinations, we are considering possibilities of students and teachers participating in the strike because we are actually supporting the campaign against VAT in the country.
The coordinating committee on VAT was established to look at some of the concerns raised. ANC and COSATU members were included in the committee. Despite this, there was still a lack of trust between the ANC and the National Party government.
At the very last meeting, when our committee had a meeting with Du Plessis, all he did was demonstrate his krachtdadig hate and informed the committee that he is not prepared to move even an inch towards meeting the demands that are being made by the people. And Mr. Chairman, this is a clear indication that the South African government, in implementing this tax, is actually making a mockery of the whole process of negotiation. But what do we find on tax? We find that the government is actually willing to do it alone, do it on an arbitrary fashion without any consultation whatsoever.
One of the VAT committee members, Bani Fanarov, a former trade unionist, warned government against taking unpopular policy decisions.
That the government up to now hasn't really understood the level of opposition in a very wide spectrum of organizations and among the people in the street against the VAT system. We hope that from today's summit it will be clear to the government that this is an extremely unpopular action that they've taken, and in view of that opposition, that they will be prepared to look more openly for a solution.
Then Minister of Finance Baron Du Plessis condemned the protest actions aimed to challenge the introduction of VAT.
A value-added tax is a good tax. The cement price is already cheaper as a result of it. It is a good tax. We must maintain value-added tax as a good tax on a wide base at the lowest possible rate. It will serve our economy best, and the people in the private sector understand it. And then also, we cannot, by way of pressure or protest marches or whatever, be forced to involve trade unions and all kinds of organizations into policy making as far as tax is concerned.
The ANC and COSATU used its seat at the newly established VAT committee to push for zero rating of certain foodstuff.
Warned previously that the way in which VAT is being imposed will threaten a tax revolt as a whole. Already in the coordinating committee, the medical sector has indicated that there will be civil disobedience relating to the payment of tax on medical services. We have indicated that this civil disobedience is going to take the form of resisting other forms of taxes. The coordinating committee on VAT has also adopted a program of action that will involve the organizing of mass marches on the 30th of September.
At the end, government had its way, and the VAT was introduced at 10%. Tsepo Mungwai, SABC News, Johannesburg.
There you have it. I think that insert definitely trying to give us some background in terms of the history of value-added tax in South Africa following its introduction for the first time in 1991, replacing the sales tax. For some more context on this, I'm joined here by the Secretary General of SAFTU, Zwelinzima Vavi, who was there, witnessed some of the exchange discussions, protests that happened at that time. What did you make of the introduction of value-added tax? Particularly, we know that at the time, the apartheid government was under pressure financially because of the sanctions, and they wanted to raise money. But the other issue is it was on the eve of their departure from government, a point that even in the inserts, Jay Naidu is raising.
Well, they were literally sitting on the departure lounge when they decided to pull a number of tricks. And in our view, all of this was designed to ensure that the future government they knew will be led by the ANC will be robbed of the critical economic instruments to effect fundamental transformation of society and to be true to the very popular slogan of a better life for all, or the wealth of the country shall be shared, coming from the economic demands of the Freedom Charter. So on the last days, they did a number of things. VAT was introduced and rammed down the throats of the country. I think it was on the 30th of September 1991. We reacted through a general strike supported or led by COSATU, but NACTU participating, but heavily supported by the alliance partners of COSATU, the ANC, and the SABC, and a host of other mass democratic movement formations that were pretty strong at that moment. It was not only the VAT that the regime introduced. In 1989, they would have announced the privatization of ISCO, of Sasol, and they introduced a macroeconomic strategy in 1990, and that was going to be a typical framework. We're talking today the days of a fiscal framework. The framework was introduced by, was it Baron du Plessis in 1990?
He was indeed the minister at the time.
Was the Minister of Finance. And we were incensed. We were angry. The working class was angry. And that's why that strike was supported by over 4 million workers.
Yeah, but one can argue that VAT even post-apartheid has served as well. That's why today we say this is a viable source of revenue that has been good for us, so maybe we should up it a bit, because we understand that it can actually help us to deal with some of the challenges.
Well, we have to look at it in the context. There was a general sales tax that was introduced in 1978 by the National Party. It lasted between 1978 until 1991 that they introduced, and by the way, important to make this point, the general sales tax applied only at the end of the chain, at the retail level. That's when you paid a 4% of general sales tax, way low. The value-added tax they introduced was now a multi-purpose. It applied at every step of the way, from your manufacturing to transport to retail.
Imports.
You pay everything. Everything is there. Introduced at 10% initially.
Yes.
The reason why we objected as the progressive forces at the time was that we regarded, as we still regard it up to this moment, as a regressive tax system that impact disproportionately more on the poor than it will impact on the richer members of society. That remains the position. And I would have now thought that ANC of the wealth shall be shared, progressive RDP, and shift the burden of tax paying from the shoulders of the poor to the shoulders of the rich. Remember, by the way, interestingly, that in 1992, the corporates were paying up to 52% of taxes to the regime. 52%.
Perhaps you have to give it to the National Party. There was a committee, a coordinating committee on VAT. For the first time, they invited many of the COSATU and ANC members who were actually invited at National Treasury to make an input. And then that's why we saw the zero rating in that we have seen. Of course, one of the issues was the fact that many people were against the payment of VAT on levies, municipal levies, on medical services. But there was an input, and somehow they listened to some of those inputs.
There was power at the same time. It was not just clever intellectuals engaging. Baron du Plessis, the Minister of Finance, he knew that he could not ignore that mass power commanded by COSATU and the Tripartite Alliance. Oh, history is bad. History is the best teacher. And look, here is the National Party, an illegitimate regime, being forced to talk to Jay Naidu, the General Secretary of COSATU, Cunningham Ngugana, the General Secretary of NACTU, James Mdlalose, the President of NACTU, may his soul rest in peace, Elijah Bahai, the President of COSATU, but then in leading intellectuals in the ANC, Paulo Jordan, and many others. They were consulted, and it is out of the combination.
Saki Matozoma was there as well.
Saki Matozoma, all of them.
Tito Mboweni.
Yes. All of these people went to engage. And it is out of that engagement that, combined with this powerful strike, that they got some few concessions to zero rate some of the most basic stuffs that workers use more, which was
in-depth reporting there from SABC News economics editor Tsepo Mongwai, just putting it all into its historical perspective, the whole issue of value-added tax. In the next few minutes, Thando Mxoli comes through to give us a roundup of the activities on the sporting field. In fact, I'm told we can proceed straight up with Thando. You want to see what he's wearing this afternoon. But let me tell you, while we look at that, the dream of an all-South African final disappeared when Egyptian lock leaders Pyramids FC knocked out Soweto Giants Orlando Pirates to set up a date in the final with Mamelodi Sundowns. Explains why Thando is so bold to be wearing that today. To talk to us about that then, the semi-finals of the CAF Champions League, as I said, SABC News senior sports reporter Thando Mxoli. Thando, good afternoon, thank you. Let's start with the Sundowns game. So this is the opportunity to add, show us the star. Open it, that lone star there.
Lone star, yeah.
With a bit of luck, a bit of precision in performance, they could add to that and make it two.
Definitely a possibility. Look, it does not have to be pretty in a tournament. You just have to progress and get to the next stage. I think I had my observations about Sundowns when I saw the team announcement and I saw Shalulile and Reyners on the bench, and I thought, who's going to score the goals for them? Because you need to keep those defenders busy. You want someone who's going to sit next to the defenders, as you've played soccer, sit next to the defender and almost and almost turn those tall, lanky defenders from North Africa. First off, we didn't see any of that. And then Cardoso made the right changes. Tembazwane came on, Reyners came on, Shalulile came on, and that defense was a lot busier and they were defending a lot more flat. The football was not being played in front of them. Now they were basically having to move and turn. And we all know tall defenders basically turn like the Titanic. And at the end, Reyners got the all-important goal, which sent Sundowns through.
It's equally important who the opposition was, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
This is Al Ahly we're talking about.
12-time champions of this tournament. We talk about Sundowns and how great they are as a team. They've only won this tournament once in 2016 with Pito Mosimane. But a team like Al Ahly, winning the league in Egypt is not important. This is what they live on. This is what a coach is judged on. If you fail to win this tournament, you're almost on your way out. They're basically on the same level as a Real Madrid, whereby the standards are so high, they compare themselves on continental football grounds, not local football. So to beat a team like this in Egypt, in Cairo, 75,000 fans who were very, very, very loud, making sure that they supported the team from the first minute till the end when Reyners silenced them. That, for me, takes a lot of temperament, takes a lot of composure and experience. And that's what, unfortunately, some other teams lacked.
So there wasn't to be the case for Orlando Pirates, right? Sure. They either had to demolish and flatten the pyramid, go through the pyramids, or go around the pyramids. But in the end, they hit a roadblock at the pyramids.
Pirates basically succumbed to a very interesting pyramid scheme. I think for me, again, we talk about experience at this level of the game. For example, and Al Ahly has not lost a semi-final since 2010. That's the kind of pedigree we're talking about. Sure. Now, Pirates have not been in this sort of stage of the tournament. They haven't been there as frequently as some of the other teams like Al Ahly, Sundowns.
Yeah.
it's different when you need to convert chances, when chances are given to you, and sometimes you need to adapt and box differently. That's what, for me, I think Pirates could not do yesterday. They had all the opportunity. They asked all the right questions. They had the pace in the likes of Ngota, but the final touch was not there. There was no one who basically grabbed the game by the horns and said, I'm going to take this moment and become a hero. There was a big miss by Hoto basically in front of the goals. Mofokeng also had a chance. It's stuff like that I suppose you learn from. And unfortunately, you have to go through those moments whereby you miss those chances, and hopefully in the future, whether it's for the national team or Pirates, we will benefit as a nation, a soccer nation, from this experience.
Yeah, in fact, build more on that argument. It's part of the conversations you and I have been having about what it all means for South African football and the quality and where it stands and where it is going. Tell me about the lessons that both teams have learned or should have learned from this process.
Look, whether it's positive or negative situations, you do learn a lot. For example, I'm wearing a Sundowns jersey today, not because I'm a Sundowns supporter, but I understand the importance of a national team and national players playing on the biggest of platforms. Patrice Motsepe, when he took over as CAF president, he said, I am not going into Africa alone. I need all those who can to come with me and make an impactful impact on African football. Sundowns have shown that they're also competing on an international level. They're looking at things like Club World Cups and Champions League. That's where they measure themselves on. Chiefs is sitting and watching at home. Pirates is saying, we've got a taste now. We've played in the semi-finals of such an important tournament. We've seen what this does for the brand that is Orlando Pirates. This needs to be bigger, and and we can grow from this. National teams have always done well when South African teams are doing well at club level in African competition. So Sundowns and Pirates, that's the core of Bafana Bafana team. That will be carried forward going into AFCON later this year, and hopefully those very same players will perform on the biggest stage again.
And how important is it for Orlando Pirates to, despite the fact that they're not in the finals, but still finish strong?
They definitely can finish strong. They can push Sundowns as far as they can in the league. I don't think they'll have the legs, but soccer, things can happen. People can lose 2 or 3 games and then things fall apart for Sundowns, for example. They've got a chance to win the Nedbank Cup, which they are holders of. It's a tournament they've won before. They are playing a team that I'm rather fond of from Naturena, but again, that's an opportunity to finish on a high and basically send Coach Rivera on his way back to Spain on a positive note with a trophy, with at least two trophies, and possibly a third if they can with the league. So you just never know. I think if you take it one step at a time, you can get those little victories. One victory at a time, one trophy at a time, one match at a time, and you never know what you end up with at the end of the day.
Thando, thank you so much. I wish you had brought a second one of those Sundowns shirts. Gladly exchanged. That's Thando Mqoli there. Just wrapping up what the week has been looking like in as far as the sporting action is concerned. And that will do it for this hour. Thank you for joining us. More quality news and current affairs programming coming up here on SABC News. Do stay with us.